Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet of ours. Welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear. This is the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable carbon neutral society, and I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thanks for joining the conversation today. It's going to be an interesting one. We're going to talk fast fashion, which is a plague on the planet and on your wallet. Fast fashion is responsible for approximately 10% of global carbon emissions and nearly 20% of wastewater production, according to the World Economic Forum. And these clothes are often worn only 5 or 6 times before they begin to fall apart. They're not worth the money. The World Resources Institute also reports that producing just one cotton t-shirt uses approximately 713 gallons of water. That's enough water to meet one person's drinking needs for over 2 years. And you're wearing it if you're wearing that shirt. But hey, you got a $10 shirt. The fast fashion industry is so destructive that the U.S. Government Accounting Office wrote in December 2024 that the United States needs a coordinated effort to reduce textile waste and promote its recycling. But we can dress for success on the planet. And my guest today is Garik Himebaugh. He is the founder of Eco-Stylist.com. It's a site dedicated to promoting sustainable fashion choices. And Garik's journey into the world of sustainable fashion began with a background in peace studies and an MBA. And it was during that time that he discovered social entrepreneurship. So he launched Eco-Stylist in 2018. And there he helps consumers make informed, sustainable fashion choices with a directory of brands that meet his criteria for ethical production and environmental responsibility. He encourages individuals to dress like you give a damn. And he was kind enough to contribute a recent article to Earth911 called How to Build a Sustainable Wardrobe of Your Dreams, and I wanted to get him on the show to discuss the fast fashion crisis, which is burying some countries in the global south in synthetic trash that can take decades for or even centuries to break down. You can learn more about Garik and ecostylist.com at, weirdly enough, ecostylist.com. Ecostylist is not one word. It has a dash between eco and stylist. ecostylist.com. We'll get to the conversation right after this brief commercial break. Welcome to the show, Garik. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, hey, thank you for joining us. I mean, from Mexico City of all places. I wanted to ask. I shared a little of your background that you were in peace studies and got an MBA, but how did you become an eco stylist? Was this where you had intended to go?
Yeah, no, definitely not. I think kind of the when I think about like the journey of how I got here, I think it's kind of really sort of funny. Like, I mean, it makes sense for me, and it's I've always loved. Well, I've loved fashion for a long time. Like, I developed a love for fashion when I was 25, but it was
Hmm.
just kind of like a personal interest for me. Like, I would, like before that, I was just kind of trying to blend in with my style. And then once I kind of discovered fashion is an expression of like creativity and self-expression, I started like creating my own Pinterest boards. And so, but it was really just a personal hobby of mine. And like I rebuilt my closet and everything, but it was just a personal interest. I never like ever thought I was going to work in fashion. Like that was never my plan, to be honest. Yeah. There was kind of like three accidents that I think happened
Okay.
that led me here. And so the first one, they all kind of happened when I was in grad school. But the first one is I did a startup weekend event, which for anybody who's not familiar with that, it's like you form teams and try to build a startup over the course of one weekend, and then you like pitch it at the end. Um, and so this one happened to be fashion themed. It was kind of a coincidence. It just the theme was fashion, so you had to like do something in fashion. And I was like, well, that's cool because I like fashion. And so I won this event, and that was definitely kind of I think a little encouraging. So that was really yeah, I was really surprised honestly by like the outcome. Um, so first it was like that, and then the second accident that happened is right around the same time. Or I did grad school in Iowa, but I went to a conference in Austin, Texas called SumoCon, and it has nothing to do with sumo wrestling. It's actually like a entrepreneurship conference for the company AppSumo that's based in Austin, and like Noah Kagan, the entrepreneur, leads this conference. And so I was there, and I think experiencing a lot of imposter syndrome because I think the average person here had like $1 million or more business. Like they're all entrepreneurs, and I didn't have a business. Like I was just like kind of there to learn, and like like I was sort of starting this thing on the side, but it didn't really exist yet. And at one point, like Noah asks um, us to like try to sell a service. Like it's like what value can you offer? So like try to like sell your neighbor, like the person next to you, like on a service. And I don't know why, but like for some reason he called me like to the front of this of like the conference. Like so I had to go in front of everybody and like pitch. And I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna say. And so I was like, well, I think I can help people dress better because like people started asking me to do that like randomly. Like my friends in grad school were like, I'm gonna ask you for style advice. And I was like, why? I was like, I don't know why, but okay. And so I pitched that, and then I had a bunch of people. I was like, for $20 or something, I'll like help you. And like a bunch of people signed up, so that was kind of encouraging for me. Um, and then the third thing that happened is also while I was in grad school, I did an internship in Boston, and by complete accident, I was like at this flea market, and I saw these like beautiful shoes, and I went and like talked to the guy, and his name was Peter Sacco, and he's the founder of Adelante made to order shoes. And he was telling me how like they make all the shoes in Guatemala and they own the factory and they pay living wages. And this was like must have been like 8 years ago now. And it just kind of like really I was like, I'd never heard this before. I was like, but I studied peace studies, so this was like kind of speaking my language of like, here's a business that's doing social impact. And I was like, I was like, but why is this like such a rare thing to find? Um, so after all these kind of things, I ended up, I was like, I wanted to build a fashion startup, and then I learned about, kind of ethical fashion from Peter, and I kind of just did a deep dive, and myself, like I ended into like, fast fashion, the problems in the fashion industry, and I kind of walked away with this question of like, first for me, how do I build a wardrobe where everything is from brands like Peter's brands, right? Brands that are like paying living wages, brands that are better for the environment, right? Like they do like made to order shoes as well. And that was the question I walked away with. And then once I did a bunch of research and realized that I wanted to help other people do that because I was like, other people want to do this too. How do I make it easy for people to like build their wardrobes with like only brands like this?
Mhm.
And that's kind of like how I ended up there. And I've been doing this for over 6 years. Eco-Stylist has been in business.
So, Eco-Stylist urges readers to dress like you give a damn. So, I want to ask you what you mean by that. Do you suggest people give a damn about their style, the planet, the durability and sustainability of their clothes, all the above? How do you describe, how do you answer the question? So, what should I give a damn about?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is kind of all the above. But when I thought of that as our slogan for the business, I was definitely thinking of like the people on the planet, right? Like I was like when you get dressed and you wear something stylish, like also like care about the planet, like care about a better impact on the planet, and care about like the people who made your clothes. So that was kind of like what I had in mind. But what I really like is that people kind of like adapt what it means to them. So it's kind of like it doesn't really necessarily just have one meaning. I think people kind of like develop their own meaning for it. And I think that's really cool. Like an example of that even would be like on our about page, like we ask all of our current and past, employees and interns, like what dress like give damn means to them. And you'll see like in their responses, it's like their responses vary quite a lot. And so I think I actually really like that people kind of find their own meaning for what it means to them.
Like style.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
exactly.
so can you define what sustainable wardrobe is or means?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question because it really means like a lot of things, right? And obviously we don't necessarily have to do all of them, or we may not be right, but it's like building a wardrobe that
Mhm.
has a lesser or a better impact on the planet and people, right? And so, but there's like a lot of ways we can do that, right? So one of them, yeah, like obviously taking care of your clothes is important. Like taking care of your clothes, right? Which taking better care, which may mean like not putting them in the dryer. I mean, there's a lot of ways we don't have to do everything, but there's a lot of ways that we can like make our clothes last longer and take better care of them, right? It can mean like wearing them as much as possible, like when they're torn, taking it to a tailor instead of like throwing it away or buying a new shirt. Also, like utilizing a tailor, I think for resizing is really important. A lot of times, like things just don't fit quite right anymore, and then people don't want to wear it anymore. And this is like
Yeah.
a pretty easy thing to solve. Like right, you can just get it adjusted. Um, then obviously also when it comes to sourcing new items, well, first of all, also when it comes to shopping, it's like not buying fast fashion, even just like making that choice, even just is like pretty big because of the impact of that. But then like the better alternatives to that could be like we thrift, right? Like maybe we might try to thrift for the thing we're looking for. We might try to shop from sustainable brands. We might do both of those things, right? So depending, so like yeah, I think there's really a lot of ways that we can build a more sustainable wardrobe, and really it's just like doing starting somewhere and kind of like doing what we can.
Well, and I like the fact that you aren't talking just about environmental impact, that we can also restore or regenerate society by creating these jobs for people who are working on these products that we wear. And by the way, I mean, I proudly have clothes from the 1980s
Wow.
uh, that I have preserved. My wife doesn't like it, but I'm proud of it. How do you how do you encourage people to think about taking care of their clothes? And do you emphasize the type of material they choose in order to make the most durable choice?
You're right. I mean, this kind of, especially now, this is kind of a cultural shift. Like, it's kind of interesting. Like, because I mean, people used to do this, right? And then like with fast fashion, they like moved away from it, and now it's like we kind of need to shift back to like taking care of our stuff. Um, there's really interesting traditions of this. Like I'm trying to remember I won't remember the name unfortunately, but I remember I've seen it in like art museums. There was this long tradition history of this in Japan where like garments would get like passed down like generation to generation, and you'd see these like really old like tattered clothes, but like people would wear them proudly. And I think that it's good to have an example, but yeah, I think we really need to be a little more. It does take kind of a shift of like being proud, because like you mentioned, I mean, yeah, it's like like now it's like a lot of times people might view these things as like I don't know, like some people might view getting something mended as like something to be ashamed of, and really it shouldn't be, right? It should be a badge of honor, like something to be proud of. And I think it's just part of the whole fast fashion mindset of like, oh, I could just go buy something new because it's so cheap, but we really need to like not do that. and
I, I had pants in college that the mending was in red thread so you could specifically see it was mended. I really like the idea of embracing this as you were describing it, and I cannot remember the name of the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery using gold, but that's a great example in their clothing as well, that they do take that kind of pride in wearing something that has some antiquity.
No, definitely, definitely. I think one thing I failed to mention is upcycling. I think is a really great example of people being proud of this in fashion, because there it's like you can repurpose and repair and reuse garments in ways that are like really creative. So it's even like it even goes beyond like maybe just giving it a simple repair to like using that opportunity to make it maybe like more like artistic or something, right? Like maybe they blend two garments together, or they add like some like really like colorful patch or something. So I think upcycling is really an interesting thing to look at, space there to look at in terms of like people being, yeah, kind of like finding creative ways to be proud of reusing garments in new ways.
So how do you select or evaluate brands for inclusion in your sustainable brands directory?
Yeah, so the criteria that we use to research brands basically we have some principles as well, but it's basically three pillars, which is like transparency, fair labor, and sustainability. And then for our principles, we have things that we penalize brands for because to be fair, because right, because it's like we kind of realized that if you just look at like apples to apples, it's actually not quite right. So what I mean by that is like let's say a fast fashion brand was able to use more than 50% sustainable fabrics across their brand. This
Mhm.
pretty much doesn't happen, but let's just say hypothetically that it did, right? Would that brand then deserve like the same, points or status as like Patagonia, for example, right?
Mhm.
And they would not, because their business model still is like encouraging hyperconsumption and overconsumption. So we have principles that if brands don't meet these, we penalize them for these. And so this is like, are they fast fashion, or do we trust them? Because there's like so much greenwashing, unfortunately, in the fashion space. And then do they inspire us? So these are kind of like our bottom points, but the majority of the points are from those three pillars I mentioned. The biggest things are going to be like for transparency. It's going to be like if they share their supply chain, then they're going to get the majority of the points for that. So like if they share obviously like the factories where their clothes are sewn, but then also like the rest of the supply chain, like the other tiers. So like where was the fabric dyed? Like if it's a raw material that turned into fabric, like cotton, like where was it turned into cotton?
Mhm.
Like where was the fabric made? Where did the cotton come from? Where did like the buttons come from? Right. So if they share all of this, that's going to be like the majority of their points for transparency. It's really fashion specific, but transparency is really important in fashion because so much exploitation happens and did happen when supply chains were kind of in the dark and not shared. Then within fair labor, it's like pay, benefits, that kind of thing. But living wages does make up a decent portion of that. Like if brands are paying living wages, their
Are there
clothing kind
particular
of
certifications that you look for in order to validate those claims, or do you? talk directly to the companies?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we do look for certifications, but it's fashion. What brands are doing is like so non-uniform at the moment.
Mhm.
So we're basically willing to we're kind of like we meet brands where they're at because we're willing to recognize that like not every brand that's doing great work has certifications, but many that are do. And so what I mean by that is like so for living wages would be a great example, right? It's like what do we accept as evidence of living wages? Like certification wise, it could be like fair trade or SA 8000, but like there's other ways. Like brands, like we work with brands without certifications that actually publish their wages is one thing. That's obviously pretty unusual. Most brands don't do that. But if they publish their wages, then you can like research that. You can say like, is that a living wage for these clothing makers? And the other really common one is minimum wages. Like we also, if they benchmark it against minimum wages, that's really helpful. Like if it's like we pay, two times, the minimum wage, like in Mexico or something, and then it's like something you can where you can verify. You're like, okay, what is the minimum wage then, and what's the living wage, and are they closing that gap? So basically, we they need to have evidence, but we're willing to accept different forms of evidence because brands just do like a variety of different things.
There's a lot to talk about here, but we're going to take a quick commercial break and be right back. Now let's get back to the conversation with Garik Himebaugh, who offers sustainable style advice and a curated collection of brands and clothing that go easier on the planet at ecostylist.com. And remember, Eco-Stylist has a dash between eco and stylist, ecostylist.com. We're discussing his recent Earth911 article, How to Build a Sustainable Wardrobe of Your Dreams. So, Garik, let's follow up on what we were talking about a few minutes ago, which is the environmental impact. How do you assess that? We talked a lot about living wages, for instance, but what do you look for in sustainability when you're judging a brand?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So the final pillar of our criteria is the environmental impact. And there, some of the major things, there's a lot of things that we look for that honestly within that one, but some of the major things that are going to get them a lot of points is like the sustainable fabrics, because fabrics make up such a large percentage of their impact for fashion brands. So it's like, is the majority of all the fabrics they use more sustainable, right? That's really important, not just like eco collection. That's like 3 items when they have like 3,000 items, so like yeah, so there it's is like the majority of their fabrics, like organic cotton, regenerative cotton, hemp, tencel, these sorts of things, like recycled fabrics, recycled cotton. These would be some options. The other ones that would make up, there's a lot, but the other things that would make up like big points would be pretty much like initiatives that actually reduce, like for example, CO2. So
Mhm.
having like at the factory levels, like initiatives, not just like at their this is with fashion. This is the complicated one because like often it's like yeah, we use like energy efficient light bulbs at our headquarters in like London or something, and it's like okay, that's great, but like your factories are making up a lot more of your impact than your headquarters are. So yeah, so like at the factory level, so they have initiatives to reduce CO2. Then is it like solar power? There's all kinds of things they can be doing there. Also like water would be another one. Like a lot of some factories now are like recycling water and filtering it, things like that. Doing things to reduce their water usage, more efficient technologies. Circularity would be another big one. If they have like circularity, perfect circularity is hard, but it's like we give them points if they're working on circularity. So like, do they at least take back clothes
Right.
to do something with it? Like, or in better case, are they like turning them into new clothes, new shoes, that sort of thing? Yeah, so those would be like some of the ways. There's more, but those would be like some of the ways they could earn big points there.
In the article you shared on Earth 911, you discussed this cultural shift towards infinite shopping. Can you talk about infinite shopping and how does EcoStylist help address that issue and promote a more mindful form of consumption?
Yeah, infinite shopping is really kind of what I think of as like the major problem with fast fashion. It's like this cultural shift towards towards endless shopping, right? Like fashion had like 2 seasons a year, and then in like with these new fast fashion brands, new at the time like H&M and Zara, it was like the fashion seasons increased into eventually it was like every week they were having new styles, and then it just kept getting faster, right? And now you have these brands, like Shein that are dropping like thousands of style a day on their website. And as you can imagine, this is like nobody can keep up with that, obviously, right? That's like it's too much. It's too much clothes. And so basically when you have like that kind of quantity, it's like, yeah, people are it's funny because like we think at gut instinct, like we think infinite choices are better, right? We're like, oh, I have more choices. And oh, it's like less money. I have more choices and it's like cheaper, which gives me then again more choices because I can like, more options for my money. And this is better because I have, you know, because I have more. But it's actually the opposite, right? Like when I was listening to a podcast episode about this where it was like when you look at like the neuroscience, people are actually less happy under these
Mm.
conditions, right? Because when they're put in this environment, they're never satisfied. It's like it's like they're always just like craving more. And because they can never get enough, they're never happy. And so it's actually more is actually less. Like more is bad actually in this context. And so this is kind of but this is where fast fashion has put us. And then when you add onto that like trends and like this endless marketing, like you're constantly being inundated on social media with like, oh, this influencer is wearing this and like you should get this too. Yeah, it
Yeah.
just like exactly it just puts people in this trap. And yeah, so really we've got to move away from that. I mean, if we're going to move away from fast fashion, it's not just boycotting the brands. Like we've got to slow down and like step away. And so that's really something we try to help people with. In Eco-Stylist is and part of it is actually price too. Like people will complain a lot about price because they've been anchored in like $5 skirts at Shein or whatever. But like price is actually part of slowing down. It's actually not a bad thing. Like if you buy way less, but you buy higher quality things and you spend more for them and you shop way less often, you're actually saving money, right? It's like it's sort of like maybe a little counterintuitive, but you're not actually spending more money. You're actually spending less because you're shopping way less. So I think there's like that. And then there's like embracing more timeless styles that we could be wearing for at least like 5 years. Like it shouldn't be like for 1 month, right? And then investing in like higher quality pieces that we're going to take care of and repair. And so yeah, kind of like just doing all of that.
It occurs to me as you're talking, if style is an expression of personal values or whatever you wanted to call it, why would anybody want to wear what a fashion influencer was wearing? Because that's just being part of a crowd. Is the influencer culture one of the bigger problems that we have too?
Yeah, this is a great question. Yeah, you're right, exactly. Because fashion is supposed to be like self-expression, and especially if we investing like time in our own personal style and understanding what we want, then yeah, it shouldn't just be like copying somebody else, ideally, right? But I think there's other psychological factors that go on with that sort of thing. Like that's like it can be more of a desire to that can I think play to people's desire to like fit in, where people are where people are trying to kind of fit in with like what's popular and what's within their like social circles and social groups. Definitely something to be cautious of because it's really not in the end, you're not really embracing your own personal style. It's more you're more kind of like chasing other goals.
Do you have advice for people looking to build a sustainable wardrobe without feeling overwhelmed? And I guess the other way to ask that question is how do you stay up to date on what your choices are?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, no, because I can definitely, I mean, there's so many kind of like we talked, even like what we talked about with like what is a sustainable wardrobe. There's like so many things we can do, and so I think the key is just to start somewhere. Like just pick one thing, right? Because you don't have to do everything. I mean, maybe eventually you can be doing like many of these pieces that we talked about, but you only need to start with one, and then it's like maybe once you've got that piece, if you feel comfortable and you feel like you can, then you can tackle on another piece. So maybe like for example, like maybe you just try to not buy fast fashion, right? Like if you're currently shopping fast fashion, maybe that's like the first one is like you try not to do that. And then maybe you try to make better choices. So then you're like, okay, maybe I want to instead shop these pieces from sustainable brands, or maybe I want to try thrifting these pieces, right? And so just starting somewhere, and then and then once you feel comfortable with that, and you're like, oh, I actually didn't need fast fashion, and maybe I like really love thrifting or something, whatever. Then you're ready. Then maybe you can like think about finding a tailor near you who can help you take care of your clothes, right? Help you resize, help get things mended, which is actually a great accompaniment to thrifting or buying sustainable brands, to be honest. Because, like for example, especially if you're thrifting, you might buy something that's not perfectly your size, and that's where a tailor is going to come in great use. But that's also true with new clothes. Like something I think we forget is like we want everything to be perfect, but like new clothes, the sizing is uniform. So the reality is like the only way to get a perfect fit is to have things adjusted, and it should be thought of as an upgrade, not just like right. It's like it's actually to have
Yeah.
something adjusted to fit you perfectly is an upgrade because then it's like it's going to fit you better than anything ever could really. So
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're spending less, if that gives you the opportunity to something really rewarding, like having your clothes tailored with that spare cash, the experience of developing and expressing your style is really something that could be much more pleasurable than going to Sheen every other week.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, because you're investing in a wardrobe that you're really gonna love. And I mean, one evidence that you love your clothes is that you wear them a lot, right? Like, if you have a shirt that you wear every week, right, and it's like every week it's in the wash because you can't wait to wear it again, right? That's like you really love that piece, and it means you're getting more value out of your wardrobe. So you're getting more joy out of your
Mhm.
wardrobe as well. And I think that's yeah, that's really important, and that's kind of something overlooked. Because like with fast fashion, that's rarely the case, right? It's like people are dissatisfied with pieces so often. You know, it's like with there was like a really alarming stat that like it was like 60% of new clothes, were ending up in landfills in less than a year, and that's obviously like a sign of like the dissatisfaction. It's like people are just buying these things and they're not wearing them all at all, or they're wearing them once and they're just like they don't love them. And it's much more satisfying, obviously, to have clothes that you love and that you want to wear and that you're wearing, hundreds of times.
So, what are some examples of brands that you particularly admire?
Our criteria is pretty rigorous. So I do want to say like any brand that we're certifying is really leading in
I
sustainability
don't mean
within.
certifying. I mean, what do you love?
Okay, fair question. Okay, so me personally, yeah, I mean, some of the brands that we work with that I've always that I really love would be like Nudie Jeans. I think I might have mentioned them, but they would be one where that's always inspired me because they take sustainability really seriously. They're always trying to improve, like their impact reports are detailed. I like the way that they take responsibility for their clothes. It's like maybe you buy a pair of jeans, it might yeah, it's gonna cost you more. I mean, it's really quality jeans. I've never had my pair repaired because they're really durable, but I have a pair, they're really great, they're organic cotton. But like they offer free repairs in their stores for life. So if I did need to get it repaired, they would repair it for me. If I didn't want it anymore, they would take it back and if necessary repair it and then resell it. So I like that they've like really taken responsibility for the whole life cycle. I like that they have sewing machines in their stores so they can
Mhm.
like repair the stuff right there in person and that they train their staff to do that. So yeah, they're definitely a brand that I've always admired. Another one would be like Outer Known in which is based in LA is a great brand that is always trying to use like better fabrics. Like they've been using some regenerative organic. There's a handful of brands that do this, but they've been using regenerative organic cotton in a lot of their pieces, which like I think like Made to Label and like Patagonia also do this as well as other brands. But that regenerative is like a step above or organic cotton because it's also
Right.
taking into consideration yeah like the farming and the soil health. So yeah, those are some brands. Like the brand I mentioned, Alante, like they've inspired me from the beginning, and I really it's still like what they do for people is still quite rare. I mean, don't get me wrong, like there's fair trade and everything like that is great, but I think like publishing your wages is just a really great step that I think other brands should do as well. I think some other brands we work with that are pretty cool, like 8,000 Ticks is kind of a lesser known brand that makes shoes they use like hemp in
Mhm.
their shoes, and it's pretty unique. Like there's very few brands doing that right now. Came out with like a running shoe, so I mean, I think like yeah, stuff like that. I think it definitely inspires me. Also, like Koyo would be another shoe brand that they're using like regenerative leather. They also have like they're using like vegan options, things like this. So yeah, these would be some. And then from like a style perspective, I always really like the style of like Taylor Stitch has like these great like sweaters and outerwear, and I'm always kind of like keeping an eye on that.
I'm wondering about the challenges you face in promoting sustainable brands. Do you find that mainstream brands do or don't want to talk to you?
I think the challenges in promoting sustainable fashion, a lot of it I think is related to fast fashion. There's a few rebuttals that you'll get within sustainable fashion, and some of them are valid. It just comes with like needing to expand, right? Like, so for example, like for example, you'll see a lot of like conscious consumers complain about like not enough plus size options, for example. And this is valid, right? Because a lot of these brands are quite small and they need to expand and have more variety, especially with things like plus size. So a lot of these things are valid, but price is like probably the one you hear the most. And it's not really valid, actually. It's more because of like people's perception and anchoring of price has been influenced so much by fast fashion that they don't realize it, but like their perception of what's fair is no longer really based in reality, right? Like the price of clothing relative to inflation has been like decreasing, because of fast fashion. And so I think if you look at the average prices of our clothes, it would probably be much like that. Like it would be like the price of clothing relative to inflation, and it would be super fair. But people aren't viewing it that way, right? People are viewing it as like, oh, it's more than fast fashion. So I think that's the biggest challenge, honestly. But kind of an interesting thing, there's also an opportunity there. Because I also saw this article in the New York Times recently about luxury fashion and about how
Mhm.
the quality has been declining. in luxury fashion and how that's a huge problem. And I think that sustainable fashion kind of fits this perfectly, right? Like if luxury is declining in quality and fast fashion obviously has terrible quality, like sustainable fashion is this place where you're going to find quality clothes at fair prices. And I think that that's really a huge opportunity, for the space. And I think when people do slow down, they'll find, that it's great because like I said, because if you spend $200 on a pair of jeans that have like a lifetime warranty or free repairs for life, it's like things like that. Like there's a lot of value. As far as mainstream brands, yeah, mainstream brands typically don't want to talk to us. Yeah, I think our criteria is pretty rigorous, and mainstream brands are unfortunately just so far from where they need to be. So yeah, unfortunately, that's not really conversations that are happening yet. Like the largest brand that we certify would probably be Patagonia, and I don't know if they're very popular, but I don't really know if I would consider them a mainstream brand. But yeah, then the mainstream brands typically they're just not doing enough.
We've talked with a lot of people about what role consumers can play in their industry to change things. What would you recommend somebody who's interested in driving more sustainable options in their shopping do to get that?
I really believe, I mean, everybody has a role in improving sustainability. And I think within fashion specifically, right, we've got like individuals, government, businesses, they all have a role to play. But I think that individuals lead, actually. Like, I think individuals are the leaders. I think we need all of it. I don't think, like often in these conversations about like who's responsible, people are looking for someone to blame or who should do all the work. And it's like, the reality is like everybody, it's all of it, it's everybody
Yeah.
together. But individuals will lead it. That's what I'd be like, right? It's like it's because individuals care and they're changing their choices and they're making better, like then that influences businesses. Businesses will cater to that. It's going to influence government. Government seems to be really has been really slow on this, but they are making progress recently, which is really encouraging. Like they're taking note of fast fashion and things like this. But yeah, so I think for those consumers, so I think recognizing that first, like that you have power and and that you can and should use it, I think is really important as an individual, right? It's like we don't need to wait for somebody else to fix these things, right? It's like we have a lot of power as individuals and we should leverage that. And just starting somewhere. Like we designed this sustainable personal shopping service to eliminate all of the work, right? Because like one of the barriers for sustainable shopping is like yeah, you got to know if they're greenwashing, and we obviously solve that with our certification and like the rigor that we do with grants. But that's not the only problem. I mean, these are clothes. There's a lot of other problems. Like, is it going to fit me? Am I going to love it? Is it my style? People have so many concerns. People have other concerns too. People have concerns like I don't want to shop any synthetics, or people have like really personal stuff, or like I only want to shop vegan clothes. And so we designed this service so like we could like look like you take a style quiz and we do all the work for you of finding clothes that you're going to love that meet all your requirements. So that's obviously one thing people can do, but people can also kind of like we talked about, just start somewhere and start with like one thing better for your wardrobe. And if that's taking, it could be taking better care of your clothes. I mean, that's free. That's essentially free and like just start with what you have, take better care of it.
Well, one place to start is your site. How often do you update it? I know we've been talking about slow fashion, but maybe you update more often than every quarter, and the store.
It's pretty much weekly updates, like especially like with our shop, especially for things that are back in stock or out of stock or things like this. We have
Mhm.
like weekly updates running on that. But then I would say like monthly, we're adding new products. Like we're obviously not trying to, keep up with the cadence of like fast fashion in terms of like constantly adding new stuff. Yeah, but we are always adding new products from our brands, to the shop that we're curating. And then for the blog, obviously, like I mentioned too, like new articles, new content. So yeah, definitely like always adding new content. Yeah, for our readers.
Well, hey, it's been a fascinating conversation, Garik. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll encourage folks to check out ecostylist.com.
Yeah, thanks so much for this conversation, Mitch. I really enjoyed it.
You've been listening to a conversation with Garik Himebaugh, founder of the sustainable fashion marketplace Eco-Stylist. And you can find his commentary, sustainable brand certifications, and shop for your personal style at ecostylist.com. Eco-Stylist has a dash between eco and stylist, ecostylist.com. Garik made an important point, one that we've discussed many times with guests, and that is more salient than ever as the new administration backs away from environmental regulation and regulation almost of any kind, as well as investments in a more sustainable economy. Each of us must take responsibility for the impact that we have. And in the midst of this hyper capitalist market economy, just slightly over half of voters in 2024 endorsed. So it's not like it's a widely accepted thing. We have to push the companies that we shop with to help us reduce our impact. As Garik said of brands that he admires, they take responsibility for their clothes. For instance, by making them with organic or sustainable materials, by providing repair services and take back programs, as well as delivering durable products that can be made to last. It's not sufficient to say that the manufacturers alone are responsible for the climate catastrophe. Consumers need to draw their line and stand their ground, not buying if there's not at least a more sustainable option. More sustainable may sound like a compromise with disaster, but it unfortunately reflects the reality we live in and must continue to change in order to achieve positive environmental outcomes. We're not going to stop wearing clothes, so we have to wear better clothes. We can avoid cheap, flimsy items that won't last and that come with a massive petrochemical and water footprint. We can choose to repair and upcycle clothing. Cotopaxi, for example, recently introduced a line of unique pieces, each one's different from the others, made from, amongst other things, discarded scraps from sailboat manufacturing facilities. We can make our clothes last, and we can send a signal, as Garik explained, that everybody, shopper and fashion label, must participate. The jujitsu move in response to this market economy is to demand better, not shoddy products. And individuals, you and me, need to lead instead of waiting for the economy to give us what we want. And I hope that's what we're trying to do here with Sustainability in Your Ear. I hope you'll take a look at any of the more than 500 episodes that we produced to date and share them with your community. Writing a review on your favorite podcast platform will help your neighbors find us, folks. You're the amplifiers that can spread more ideas that create less waste. Tell your friends, your family, your coworkers, the people you meet on the street that they can find Sustainability in Your Ear on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or whatever the purveyor of podcast goodness that they prefer. Thank you for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Sustainability in Your Ear, and we will be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.